It's a pleasure being invited here. This is Martine and my first time at this conference. I'm actually a professor of surgery at Stanford, so why am I here? I happen to be a technical advisor on his MW dissertation, so I had the fortune of being able to work with him on this great project. And so we're looked at the rise of crowdsourced critic and how it affects retail behavior. Professional wine ratings, we know that they have an enormous market effect. It's been, that's been proven over and over. But crowdsourced ratings has a lot of effect all over other industries, as you can see through Yelp and 5-star ratings. And with smartphones and wine apps, it's just becoming more and more popular. And in 2015, 26% of wine buyers in the US were actually using a wine app such as Vivino, and we know that 4 years later, it's bound to be more. So instead of paying attention to these guys, we're starting to pay attention to these guys. And so we had 4 major categories: red wines from California, then we had red wines that are French and Napa, so a little bit more regional, and then white wines and sparkling wines, so these 4 categories. And we had a big, massive data collection of over 1,200 respondents, 18 decisions each, so over 21,000 purchases, over 150,000 options. And we had various numbers of stars for wines that were randomly selected, and then also numbers of ratings. So the volume of ratings also matters here. And then we also had professional ratings to go side by side so we can compare the two. So this is what one of the screens look like. You have a selection of wines. Also on the right you have you can select none of those wines. There were prices, occasionally there were sales, and then they would have scores, number of ratings, and then also professional ratings as well. Then we used a technique called discrete choice modeling, basically to find all the combinations of how these ratings affected purchasing behavior. Did 200,000 simulated purchases for each of these combinations, and then predicted the market share from each category. Okay, so what you see here is basically that you see the green lines, that for each of those 4 categories there is an upward trend with ratings. That makes sense. Higher ratings drive more sales. And then I'm just going to pick the red California aisle. You can see that the slope of the effect of the rating actually increases when you have more ratings. So 1,473 and 852 volume of ratings. So this means that there's some weird interactions here. So there's sometimes volume trumps the numerical rating. For example, for the red wine, French and Napa, 4.0 stars with 852 ratings actually drove more sales than 4.4 stars with fewer ratings. And then this is more pronounced with wines that are less familiar, so more international market. This is a US survey for the French Napa and then also the white wines. We see that there is a more pronounced effect. You can see here on the right that there's more slope. And then for the sparkling wines, it's actually pretty much independent of rating volume. So familiarity is key. And then we did the same thing with the black bar for professional ratings. And what you can see here is that basically that for these different categories, this is the number of crowdsourced ratings that I would make to be equivalent to the effect of the professional ratings. Meaning that if you have enough ratings, you can actually surpass the pros and their effect on the market. So there's a powerful influence, we've proven that, and then crowdsourced influence can surpass pro ratings, and less familiar wines require more rating volume to kind of prove to the customer that they're important. In a retail setting, we can basically use this for sales strategy. All right.
Okay, so far we have the what crowdsourced ratings work. They can affect purchasing behavior. But why stop there? We had the iterative power of that discrete choice modeling tool. We were able to create the market over and over again to explore. And so we also explored the who and the how. And if we're lucky, the why. So I'm circling the points that can lead you to the important parts. First, for the who. The ideal shopper profile, generationally, we see that they were a little bit on the younger side for the most part. Monthly purchasing habits, we found that there was an upward trend. The more you spent a little bit more, the more you were influenced by crowdsourced ratings. And then self-reported wine knowledge. If we have more time, I'll come back to this later. Basically, the people who thought that they were connoisseurs were more impacted by crowdsourced ratings than the novices. We can just explain that later if we want to, because that's fascinating. And so next, crowdsource matters to which types of wines. We thought, hey, maybe for Cabernet, maybe for Zinfandel, maybe for Oregon or Pinot Noirs and regions. It depends on what the store shelf looks like. The strength changes based upon how the shelves were arranged of crowdsourced ratings. We had an example where we'd mixed bag shelf. All of those right there are Cabernet, Zinfandel, red blends, and Zinfandels and Cabernets. And here, everything was a Cabernet, right? Mixed bags versus pre-sorted shelves. And we ran the simulation once more. What we found is that mixed bag shelves, the popular varieties, benefited more from crowdsourced ratings than the less popular varieties, right there. Whereas in the pre-sorted shelves, the variance disappeared, meaning Cabernet-only shelves and Zinfandel-only shelves exhibited the same. Those wines exhibited the same influence on the consumer behavior for crowdsourced ratings. Influenced by origin, identical results. The more popular origin had an advantage over the least popular origin, whereas pre-sorted shelves, that statistic not significant. The influence effectively disappeared. Influenced by price was the opposite of the variety origin. Mixed bag, no statistical significance. But then pre-sorted shelves, meaning all of the wines that are expensive here, all the wines that are cheap here, we definitely saw an increase in the influence of crowdsourced ratings for the more expensive wines versus the cheaper wines. So summary, we initially found out the what, right? Crowdsourced ratings can affect purchasing behavior. With significant volume, they can be equal to professional ratings. We also found out the who. Crowdsourced ratings influence demographics differently. And they affect variety and origin differently, more than all things being equal. But shelf configuration can amplify the results or eliminate those advantages that the popular varieties and origins have. Context. Familiarity governs the relationship between the utility of crowdsourced ratings for a consumer and the behavior of that consumer in a crowdsourced ratings. We'll skip the industry implications, but these are awesome. And basically, yeah, you're at the store, you have no idea what to choose, whip out your Vivino to go with that Royale with cheese. All right, thank you.